Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this reading of the National Partners of the American Theater Region 7 pick for the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. My name is Daniel Repp, and I want to start off with a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that this virtual performance is being produced by Western Washington University on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. Here in Bellingham, Washington, we recognize the Lummi and Nooksack tribes. This calls me to commit to continuing to learn how to be a better steward of the land I inhabit as well. It is important to acknowledge the long-standing history that has brought us all to reside on the land and to seek to understand our place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in past tense or in historical context. Colonialism is a current, ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. It is also worth noting that acknowledging the land is Indigenous protocol. I would also like to recognize all the people who have built, created, and died in the process of the society being what it is today. The actions of the European colonizers have created damaging ripples in those communities that still require action to be taken.
Good Heavens by Daniel Repp. Setting: the realm of historically famous deceased astronomers outside of time, the Holy Roman Empire, 1594 to 1627. Characters:
Hypatia, ageless, 4th century Alexandrian female philosopher, mathematician, and astronomer.
Guillaume le Gentil, ageless, 18th century French male astronomer.
Tycho Brahe, 52 to 55, 16th to 17th century Danish astronomer.
Johannes Kepler, 22 to 56, 16th to 17th century German astronomer.
Katharina Kepler, 74, medicinal healer, accused witch, and mother of Johannes.
Act 1. An empty stage.
Good evening, everyone.
And welcome to Good Heavens, the tale of two great minds with an astronomical legacy.
I am Hypatia of Alexandria, student and teacher of philosophy, mathematics, and the heavenly bodies in the 4th century.
I am Guillaume le Gentil, astronomer turned adventurer for the French Royal Academy of Sciences in the 18th century.
But Guillaume, are we the two minds around which this play orbits?
No, Hypatia, the honor of that sun, or Earth, depending on your era in scientific allegiance, falls to two others.
Caroline Herschel and Henrietta Leavitt?
Alas, not tonight.
Nicholas Copernicus and Galileo Galilei?
Right era, wrong names.
And who?
Our cunning audience has doubtless figured it out by now. They have programs, don't they?
So they do. Well then, they must know that this is the story of Johannes Kepler and Tycho Brahe.
Kepler and Tycho, whose partnership at the dawn of the 17th century redefined the solar system.
The very same.
Johannes Kepler, the German who devoutly worshipped a Protestant god.
And Tycho Brahe, the noseless Dane who worshipped parties and booze.
Johannes Kepler, who craved Tycho's astronomical observations.
And Tycho Brahe, who enlisted Kepler's brilliant mind.
Johannes Kepler, who searched obsessively for divine perfection in the cosmos.
And Tycho Brahe, who worked to secure his own legacy through an incorrect model of the universe.
Good
Heavens!
Hypatia and I have been plucked from the pages of history to tell their tale because we are people who understand sacrifice to work in astronomy.
A dubious honor, to be sure.
I, for instance, was commissioned by the French Royal Academy to travel to India and observe the 1761 transit of Venus. Along with observations by astronomers around the world, my measurements of Venus crossing the sun would be used to figure out the distance from the Earth to the sun. In 1700s astronomy terms, that measurement is known as a big deal. However, war and weather delayed my voyage. When the transit occurred, I was still on board my ship. The skies were clear and I could not get any useful measurements because of the boat's rocking. But did I despair? Well, yes, but I did not give up. I made up my mind to...
Guillaume?
Yes?
this play is not about you.
Right.
You already have a play about you and an opera.
Both took some artistic liberties.
Sometimes it'd be like that. They're all waiting to see Kepler and Tycho.
Ah, yes. I just thought it would be help to give some context on the field of astronomy.
By telling a story from 2 centuries after this one?
Perhaps I got carried away.
To understand Kepler and Tycho's world, we must understand 3 things about Europe in the late 1500s. Number 1, astronomy, astrology, and theology were tied closely together.
People wanted to know how the night sky worked, why God made it that way, and what that meant for their horoscope.
Number 2, the structure of the universe was an open question.
For over 1,000 years, astronomers like my friend Hypatia here imagined the Earth at the center of the universe, with the sun and all the planets moving in perfect circles around it.
We were working off the assumptions of a man named Ptolemy, who had the most comprehensive theory available. But in the 1500s, Copernicus proposed a universe with the sun at the center.
However, not everyone was convinced right away because...
Number 3, nobody had great data on how the night sky changed over spans of many years. Ptolemy and Copernicus both recorded observations, but neither were very precise.
And neither's predictions completely fit what you'd expect from either an Earth-centered or sun-centered universe.
So even if astronomers ignored scriptures and zodiacs,
which they did not,
they still had to nail down how the planets were moving across the night sky and what arrangement of the universe could explain those paths.
Observation and theory.
A classic dichotomy mirrored in the work of 2 minds.
Minds with an astronomical legacy. See how we've come full circle?
Just like the sun?
Or perhaps the Earth.
Okay, shall we begin?
Indeed. Let us bid adieu to all further ado.
We take you now to the University of Tübingen in Württemberg.
Present-day Germany.
In 1594.
A bright young student from the university seminary is visiting the office of his mentor, Michael Maestlin.
Professor of Mathematics and Astronomy.
The student has been studying diligently to become a Lutheran minister, but he is about to be thrown off course, which is good news for astronomy because our student is in fact an extraordinary man.
There is a knock at the office door.
Come in.
The one and only
Johannes
Kepler.
Thank you for coming on such short notice.
It was fortunate timing. I have been meaning to ask you about our previous discussion of Copernicus and how that might fit into...
Shut the door first.
Kepler shuts the door.
Is something wrong?
I don't want the other faculty to hear. I told you about Copernicus in confidence.
His theory is widely known.
But not widely accepted.
That's what I found in my discussions around the university.
Discussions with whom?
Everyone, really. It's hard to keep track.
Kepler.
The more I investigate, the more it makes sense that the Earth and planets orbit the sun. In fact, the alternative seems clumsy to me. I did some calculations last week about how the sun would appear to move across the sky under Copernicus's model, and it matches remarkably well with what I kind of
You will find the university's grievances with Copernicus are not mathematical, but theological.
What we find in scripture should never make us ignore what we observe in nature. Besides, a proper reading of scripture yields no discrepancies with a moving earth.
I agree. You do not need to preach to me.
It could be good practice. I hope to preach to a whole congregation soon. Once I'm a pastor, I want to help people take scripture seriously without taking it so literally.
If you want to become a pastor, you should keep these ideas to yourself.
I don't think I can. I take after my mother in that regard. We both share whatever's on our minds. Unfortunately, I am more susceptible than her of others' opinions in response.
That's a good susceptibility to have. What people think of you can determine the opportunities you have available, which is what I wanted to speak with you about.
Oh no. Have I done something wrong?
No, not at all. The officials over in Graz are searching for someone to serve as district mathematician and mathematics professor at their Protestant seminary. They asked the university to recommend a candidate. You were chosen.
Me?
You have a gift for mathematics. None of our other students spend their free time running calculations on the sun's motion.
But I am just 1 year away from completing my program. I am eager to serve God as a pastor.
Perhaps you can serve him as a mathematician. I like to think it's a worthy profession.
I wouldn't suggest otherwise, but the spiritual need around us. Look at all the fights breaking out, the people displaced from their homes because of disagreements within God's own family.
It is not our fault that the Catholics and Calvinists are set on twisting scripture and stamping out the truth. Our place is to trust God and leave the princes to their wars.
Our place is to show our neighbors the utmost love and respect, whether they are Lutheran, Calvinist, Catholic, or even heathen. Perhaps I could help lead churches to peace. In fact, I find I agree more with the Calvinists about communion, even more so than with our fellow Lutherans.
Then it is fortunate you are not being summoned to teach theology.
Professor Maestlin, I
Think
really
it
don't.
over. The choice remains yours, but I can think of no one better for the job.
Kepler agonized over the decision.
He consulted his mother. She advised him to trust the university's decision, but ask for the chance to finish his pastoral studies in the future.
After securing this arrangement, off to Graz Kepler went.
It was a decision made reluctantly, but one that would change astronomy forever.
As district mathematician, Kepler's duties included making astrological calendars for Graz.
As mathematics professor, his curriculum included the motion of the planets across the night sky.
His work put the heavens on the menu for his hungry mind.
When Kepler accepted the position, it seemed far from the will of God. In retrospect, however, he could describe it as nothing else.
So when Kepler returns to visit his mentor 2 years later, he has some exciting news.
Lights up on Michael's office.
I'm so glad you were able to make the trip. Have you forgiven us yet for delaying your path towards the clergy?
I had been hoping to work for God's harmony on earth. I did not realize I would find his harmony at work in the heavens.
Oh, and what did you find?
This.
You may have to be a bit more specific.
I may have discovered the why behind the planets.
That's excellent. What does that mean?
Why the planets orbit at the distances they do. It's all in the shapes.
Shapes are nice.
Well, you see, the sphere of Saturn's orbit is just big enough to contain a cube of just the right size to contain the sphere of Jupiter's orbit, which in turn can contain a tetrahedron around Mars's orbit.
Like a perverse set of Russian dolls.
What?
Kepler freezes.
Here, my friend.
You're right. Russian dolls won't be invented for another 300 years. How anachronistic of me to confuse Kepler so.
I worry more about confusing the audience.
Do you question their intelligence?
I wouldn't dare, but without a visual aid.
It's just an octahedron, inside a dodecahedron, inside an icosahedron, inside an...
Have you ever noticed how most plays feature a conspicuous lack of the word icosahedron?
Fair point. I'll press Kepler towards the heart of the matter.
Many thanks. The audience is still waiting to meet Tycho Brahe. Remember?
True. Let's resume.
Kepler unfreezes.
Inside the tetrahedron within Mars' sphere of orbit.
Excuse the interruption, but when did you have time to come up with all of this?
No one comes to my classes. I think maybe I talk too fast. Or maybe I speculate too much. Or maybe it's just the fact that I jump between phrases.
Back to your model. What are these planets orbiting?
The sun, naturally.
Michael gets up and closes his office door.
So it is a Copernican system.
This could prove the Copernican system. It not only explains the distances of the planets, but their number. Why did God make 6 planets?
Uranus and Neptune had not been discovered yet.
Because between them, you can fit each of the 5 Platonic solids. It's truly beautiful to see his work and his careful design.
I'm not sure everyone will agree if you insist God designed the Earth to move.
I have devoted a whole chapter detailing how the model does not conflict with Scripture.
A whole chapter of what?
My book. I thought you'd be proud of me.
I am. You just maybe leave that chapter out.
But it's true.
Right, that doesn't make it easy to publish.
Then you think it's worth publishing?
I've never seen you so excited. And you are notoriously excitable.
I feel I found my new calling. I've already compared my model to the data.
And it fits.
Not all of it. But the discrepancies could be due to how uncertain the observations on record are.
I assume you used Copernicus's observations?
They're the best I had available.
How would you like something better?
I'm listening.
There's a Danish lord who runs an island observatory with the most accurate equipment astronomy has seen to date. He makes Copernicus's measurements look as shaky as the scribblings of a child.
Do you think if I wrote him, he would let me compare my model to his observations?
Hardly. I've heard he's a tyrant to his assistants. Imagine how he'd treat a commoner from Graz. But there's another man, Ursus, who has worked with him in the past. Ursus has a new model of the universe you might find interesting.
Where does that leave me?
Send Ursus 2 copies of your book, one for him and one to pass on to the Dane.
And that will get me closer?
If you play your cards right. Include a letter to Ursus telling him how much you loved his book.
I haven't read it.
If it's truth you want, focus on the deeper truth here. Data. To get the data, you'll need to use a little flattery.
I suppose it won't hurt in the long run.
It would hurt.
It would very much hurt.
Because Kepler's mentor severely overestimated the friendship between Ursus and the Danish lord, who held the precious data.
And who might that Danish lord be, Guillaume?
I bet our audiences can guess. It was none other than the imperial mathematician of the Holy Roman Empire,
The one and only
Tycho
Brahe.
Tycho, 52, enters as lights come up on his office. He has a large mustache and a fake golden nose.
The year is 1598.
His island days behind him. The man himself now sits in his new office in Prague, Bohemia.
He is about to receive some mail from his assistant, Longomontimus. Yes, that is his real name.
Hey, boss.
3 years after Kepler sent his letter to Ursus, we see the dubious payoff.
What have you got?
Mail, a couple books, and a letter.
Let's have a look.
Tycho looks at the cover and throws it at Longomontanus, who ducks out of the way.
I take it you saw the author.
Ursus, how does he continue to get his stinking piles of waste published?
It's worse than usual, I'm afraid.
Tycho gestures towards the book and Longomontanus retrieves it for him.
On astronomical hypotheses.
In addition to some insults on your leadership and some rather uncivil comments about your wife and daughter, he outlines a model of the universe which...
Is it my model?
Yes, he shows the planets orbiting the sun while the sun orbits the Earth.
The worm. I shall never regret any dinner more than the which I invited him.
That turned out to be false.
He goes snooping in my library, steals my work, and passes it off as his own?
This time he's even admitted to it.
Let it be theft, but it was intellectual. Learn to safeguard your possessions hereafter.
I assume you'll want me to write a refutation.
Look at the letter he put in to support his work. Someone called him first among the mathematician of our time, like the sun among the minor stars.
Disgusting.
What a sycophant. Have you heard of this Johannes Kepler fellow?
Actually, yes.
The introduction to the cosmographical essays containing the cosmographical mystery of the marvelous proportion of the celestial spheres and of the true and particular causes of the number, size, and periodic motions of the heavens, demonstrated by means of the 5 regular geometric bodies. Well, I guess that saves me from having to read the thing.
If you think the title's bad, look at the author.
Johannes Kepler. Who is this person and why does he so desperately want to irritate me?
Maybe he explains in his letter.
Huh. This is curious. He wants my opinion of his book.
After praising Ursus?
There are two explanations. Either Ursus included the letter in his book without permission.
That sounds like the Ursus we know and hate.
Or this Kepler person is very stupid.
Well?
He's not stupid.
How refreshing!
I can smell a brilliant mind behind these words. You know what I mean. If he kept the Earth fixed and had the rest of the planets around the sun. Longomontimus, get me some parchment.
Are you going to write him with your opinion?
No, I'm going to ask him to come visit.
What for?
I expect we could have some fruitful conversations. I have data. He has a fresh perspective. If it all goes well, I might even offer him a job.
A job?
Don't worry, I'll keep you around. In fact, if Kepler joins, maybe you won't have such a full plate.
Do you think he can help prove your model?
I think he has a fair shot. Besides, if he's working for me...
He's not working for Ursus.
Precisely.
Here are some fun facts about Europe at the dawn of the 1600s. First off, mail took a long time to get around.
Sometimes letters got stuck in cities along their route for months at a time. That happened with Tycho's invitation. He sent it in April of 1598, but it didn't reach Kepler until December.
Secondly, Europe was still reeling from the Protestant Reformation and subsequent religious wars.
There were a lot of wars.
Martin Luther hadn't planned to start a new religious group when he posted his initial critiques of the Catholic Church.
He said, "I've got 95 theses, but a church ain't one." Paraphrasing, of course.
But, of course, everybody started picking sides, and the wrong choice might get you stabbed.
By Kepler's day, there was a treaty in the Holy Roman Empire that let people choose their religion.
Oh, so no one would give a hard time to pagans like me?
The treaty let people choose between two religions.
Both Christian.
And really, the princes chose for their states.
If you picked a different religion than your prince, you get to choose between leaving or getting killed. A slight step up from getting killed automatically.
Kepler taught at the Protestant seminary in Graz. That was fine in 1594.
But in 1599, Archduke Ferdinand II was getting some ideas. Ideas that did not bode well for Kepler and his Protestant beliefs.
And life was already bad enough for the Kepler family.
Any good news?
None.
Of course not. That would be too much to ask.
Barbara, I tried, but they will not budge. Only Catholic burials are allowed.
We can give her a Catholic burial.
Absolutely not.
Aren't you always saying you want peace with the Catholics?
I want people to openly discuss their religious ideas. Pretending to adopt beliefs we don't have won't get us there.
Then we could have a Protestant burial if you...
We are not going to pay a fine to bury our own daughter.
We'll leave her body out for days?
I did not expect we would
That's
be...
the other option. I thought burying Heinrich was the hardest thing I'd ever do, but leaving Susanna unburied is somehow worse.
It breaks my heart too.
Not by enough, apparently.
My convictions are not as fragile as my heart.
Paying the fine isn't aligning with Ferdinand. It would be an act of protest, really.
An expensive act of protest.
Do not tell me this comes down to money.
Of course not. It comes down to my duty to this family, which requires money to...
Right now, your duty to this family is to make sure Susanna gets a proper burial. You won't get any peace from me or your conscience until you see to that.
No, I expect not. I will see if I can get the fine reduced.
Again, with the money.
We need to be saving up. I am unsure how long they will keep me as district mathematician.
They're not going to get rid of you.
We cannot be certain.
Yes, we can. You were the only person at the seminary allowed to return to Graz. Ferdinand himself loves your science.
Which is why I think we may have a chance at getting the fine reduced.
It's why you don't need to.
I may be an exception for now, but it will not last. Did you see what was happening in the town square this afternoon?
I think I smelled it. Lots of smoke.
They are burning Bibles now.
Bibles?
Lutheran Bibles. They gathered thousands of copies. If they will not spare scripture, I am not optimistic about our chances.
You want to get out before it gets bad.
It's already bad. But where would we go?
How about Prague?
What?
This came in for you today. From a certain Tycho Brahe.
Good heavens.
You sent him your book a few months ago, didn't you? What does he think?
He likes my model. He says I should go compare it with his observations.
There's our way out.
It is not exactly a job offer. We might not even have a place to stay.
If he's showing you his observations, he might insist that you stay. Isn't this the Tycho you always complain hoards his data?
Tycho has abundant wealth. Only like most rich men, he does not know how to make proper use of his riches.
Then he could use your help.
If the Counter-Reformation keeps getting worse, we could use his help.
We should go.
Yes. I will write him immediately.
First, go back and pay the fine.
I do not even know if I will have a job.
But you'll know your daughter is resting in peace.
Do you think Tycho will help me find it? The divine, perfect order of the heavens?
He might. Why?
Because all I see on earth is chaos.
Kepler's leap of faith was rewarded before he even reached Prague. Tycho sent him another letter insisting that Kepler join him, not so much as a guest, but as a highly desirable participant and companion in our observations of the heavens.
When Tycho's invitations reached Kepler, he was overjoyed.
He arrived in Prague to a warm welcome, and it looked like for a moment like a beautiful partnership had begun.
But Kepler soon learned that working for Tycho did not mean access to his precious observations.
Kepler was only given data on a need-to-know basis.
And Tycho decided that unless it was for a project he assigned, Kepler did not need to know.
Even worse were the dinners,
Kepler hated Tycho's dinners.
the crowds,
The gossip.
the wine.
Kepler drank more during Tycho's dinners than in the rest of his life combined.
He made himself attend only because every once in a while Tycho would let slip a gem from his precious hoard of observations.
But Kepler's temper grew thin over time.
Tycho, Kirsten, do you ever wish you had married differently?
I am not ashamed of my common birth, Longomontanus.
I assure you, my dear, there is nothing common about you.
No, I mean, Kirsten, do you ever regret marrying a madman?
Never for a moment.
Ours was a love written in the stars.
Stars do not write our fate.
They better, unless we want to be out of a job.
Have you ever made up predictions to mess with Emperor Rudolph?
That would be lying.
It would also be fun, I bet.
I have not tried that, but I do try to keep us from war when he asks us what the stars have to say about his military campaigns.
You make things up?
I always report the correct movements of the stars and the planets. I would not want those observations to go to waste.
It would seem you do not want those observations going to any use at all.
Kepler, have you been drinking much?
I am fully sober.
I was worried that might be so. Dinner is hardly the occasion. Longomontimus, please pass some wine and help alleviate my assistant's unfortunate condition.
Longomontanus pours more wine into Kepler's cup. Kepler drinks it reluctantly.
I noticed something the other day. Did you know that 2 years ago Venus was in opposition longer than it has ever been since I began my observations?
Is that so?
Yes, and it passed unusually close to Mercury as well.
I have something even more impressive.
What is that?
Dear, I think Kepler wanted to hear more about your observations.
Then maybe he should try helping with them sometime.
Excuse me?
You are always so desperate to make withdrawals from my bank of data, but you rarely help make a deposit.
I have a weak constitution, terrible eyesight, and double vision. I am unable to stay out in the cold at night without getting sick, much less make accurate measurements. You know that.
I do, which is why I let you off the hook for observations and give you other projects.
I am lousy at observations, but you are lousy at theory.
That's the imperial mathematician you're speaking to.
Am I threatening your reputation? Forgive me, I forgot how important that is to you. I shouldn't let reality get in the way of your grand ideals.
I think perhaps you've had too much wine.
You want to know the Tychonic system, the true Tychonic system? Here it is. Tycho thinks he is the center of the universe, and the rest of us orbit him. What a shame his model puts such a great distance between him and those who could offer him so much.
You ungrateful fool.
At least this version of the Tychonic system is supported by the data.
So is mine. Do you not agree that having the planets orbit the sun explain their motion much more than if they orbit the Earth?
Yes, but only if the Earth orbits along with them.
Then how do you explain why the planets go backwards? Do you buy into Copernicus's excuse that the Earth itself rotates?
It's a possibility.
That's absurd. If the Earth were rotating, when you dropped something from a high tower, the Earth would be spinning as it fell. The object would hit the ground far from the base of the tower, but that's not what happens.
And if the Earth were moving around the sun, we would observe a large parallax between where each star appears. You know, like if you hold your fingers in front of you at two distances and move your head back and forth, the one closer to you seems to move more.
I am abundantly familiar with parallax, but the effect decreases as things get farther away.
How far away can the stars be? The universe would have to extend to absurd distances in all directions.
That would be utter chaos. Kepler, you of all people should agree that God would not allow such a disorderly expanse.
Who are we to put limits on God?
We do not set the limits, but Scripture does. God's prophets clearly state that the earth is fixed in the center of the universe.
The prophets were not giving mathematics lectures. They were making analogies to the heavenly bodies in order to illustrate.
I may not live the most virtuous lifestyle, but I do hold Scripture to be true. Even if the prophets were not teaching physics, they could have not said something incorrect.
If you admire prophets for revealing God's truth, why are you keeping it hidden? Somewhere in your observations is a portrait of the very face of God, waiting to have the glory of his cosmic order discovered. Every day you keep that data locked up delays that discovery.
History does not care whose discoveries are fast. What matters is whose discoveries are first.
What matters are the discoveries themselves.
Only fair to expect some credit for decades of work.
But keeping others from their work to defend that credit is selfish.
Selfish? My duty is to my family. If the Tychonic system outlives me, the Brighid name will keep our children living comfortably for generations.
Do you think people will remember my name?
No one can pronounce your name.
Hey,
Everyone can see the night sky. Anyone could get the data. Tycho, anyone could get the data Tycho has if they worked for it.
False. Not everyone has entire islands gifted to them to construct observatories or funds to build precise instruments. Not everyone even has good enough eyesight to see the heavens clearly.
not everyone has a golden nose.
I may have been dealt an exceptional hand, but I have played it exceptionally well. Whatever God's reasons, he has let me to be the one with the data.
What a shame he did not give you a mind that could make use of it.
Kepler stands.
Don't you realize we are in Prague?
It would be incredibly disrespectful to get up before the host.
Good. I would hate to show respect that is not due.
What an insolent man!
How easily some people take hospitality for granted.
And for Kepler to act as if you need him.
Tycho stands and begins to exit in pursuit of Kepler.
God help me, I do need him.
Tycho knew that Kepler's mind was his best bet at making progress on his model.
And Kepler knew that even with the full set of data out of reach, he was closer to determining the orbits of the planets with Tycho than with anyone else.
Kepler apologized and Tycho forgave him immediately.
It had been merely an uncomfortable dinner.
But it would not be Tycho's worst.
Or his last.
The only issue left was that of salary.
Up to this point, Kepler had no official paid position with Tycho. Tycho hosted Kepler's family and paid their living expenses, but this arrangement relied on goodwill.
Which, as we have seen, was not a guaranteed between the two.
Before returning, Kepler and his wife sought a more certain source of income.
And thus we come to the part of the show called Kepler Just Tries to Get Paid.
Remember, we are at the very start of the 1600s, so everyone communicates via letters.
Throughout this section, Hypatia and Guillaume carry the letters from their writer to their recipient as paper airplanes.
First, Tycho writes to Emperor Rudolph. Meow.
Your Majesty, the young Johannes Kepler has proved instrumental in the furthering of my astronomical work in your service. To secure his continued assistance, could you arrange for a salary for Kepler to be paid from the imperial treasury?
No. Emperor Rudolph asked the authorities in Graz to continue paying Kepler his district mathematician salary and offers to pay Kepler half that salary from the treasury in addition. No.
Kepler sends the good news to his wife. Wow.
My dear Barbara, the Emperor has proposed a favorable agreement for all parties involved. The Catholic authorities in Graz can show allegiance to the Emperor while keeping me out of their hair. And I can continue my work while earning 50% more for our family than before.
But bad news was quick to follow. The counselors in Graz sent word to Kepler. No.
What do we care about astronomy?
Astronomy is stupid.
You're stupid.
Go be a doctor.
Yeah, learn something useful.
We're not gonna pay you.
Changing tactics, Kepler appeals to Archduke Ferdinand of Graz himself. Wow.
Your cousin Rudolph has made notable scientific progress by having an imperial mathematician. Perhaps you would be interested in hiring one yourself?
Ferdinand has other ideas, though. He orders all citizens of Graz to show up at 6 in the morning on July 31st for an examination of faith.
Kepler and Barbara dutifully show up. You Catholic?
No.
You want to start being Catholic?
No.
No.
Boom! Banished! Next. God, I love doing the Lord's work.
Kepler leaves home and updates Tycho on his misfortunes. No.
I'm afraid that our arrangement with the Emperor has fallen apart.
And Tycho writes back, no.
My model needs your insight now more than ever. I will provide for your family's expenses until we can figure out the salary.
This, of course, is not ideal for Kepler.
He reaches out to his mentor, Michael Maesling, at the University of Tübingen, hoping he might receive sympathy from a Protestant institution.
Old friend, might there be some little professorship available for a scholar in need?
And Michael writes back, I am grieved to hear of your persecution at the hands of our enemy's stubborn dogma.
I do not see the Catholics as our enemies, so much as our in-laws, whom we must love peacefully. As you know, there are even points in the current Lutheran theology which I raise objection to, and I look forward to the possibility to have open discourse in Tübingen as to...
Regrettably, there are no positions available at this time. But hey, I'm praying for you.
Kepler ends up 0 for 3 on potential employers. The only place to go is back to Prague.
A relieved Tycho arrives in a carriage to escort him back personally.
Tycho and Kepler join each other, sitting together in a carriage.
Thank you for coming to get me.
Of course.
I heard your daughter Elizabeth is getting married to one of your assistants.
To technical? Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He is a fine man.
He's great. You'll meet him later in the show.
We have had nice weather this summer.
Yes. Though I imagine you miss the longer nights for observations.
Sometimes. I'm grateful to see the sun still make its rounds every day.
Mentioning the sun coming out is safe talk for everyone, except 17th century astronomers.
I'm sorry to hear about what happened in Graz.
Thank you.
Although I must admit, I am grateful to have you return. You could have just converted.
It would not have been worth it to stay the way matters are going. People deserve an environment where they can think for themselves.
Not everyone can think for themselves.
They can if they have the right information. That's why Lutherans are urged to read scripture for themselves and draw their own conclusions. Although I fear the Lutherans may have simply abandoned one dogma for another.
Do you talk about this with everyone? Even with all the wars happening? I think I may understand why you keep getting kicked out of places.
Believe me, I would go crazier if I stayed silent. Ideas are meant to be discussed freely.
Except in our field, of course.
Especially in our field.
All astronomers want their work discussed once they've published it, but it is unwise to divulge our secrets before that point.
What secrets? I could not have completed any of my theories if I were not constantly writing colleagues about my process.
Naturally, we must let some people into our circles to make progress. Choosing who can be is a risky endeavor.
The smaller you draw your circles, the slower your progress can go.
For the planets, smaller circles meant a faster journey.
A shorter journey, yes. The smaller the orbit, the less distance they have to travel. But that does not apply to a context.
Actually, they might go faster as well. You should take a look at my observations.
Do you mean that?
It was my plan. You could be a valuable person to have in my circle.
I am honored.
I said you could be. If I can trust you to keep the data between us, I do not intend to bring everyone on your correspondence list into my circle with you.
What is that?
An agreement I'd like you to sign. It specifies that you will not share my data I show you with anyone without my written permission.
Which data would you be showing me?
Whatever you need.
I have already been banished from my homeland for refusing to be silenced. I'm not eager to accept a muzzle from you.
What if I got you a salary?
We tried asking Emperor Rudolph before.
We shall try again.
Kerchunk!
Shall we go?
Go where?
To ask the Emperor.
Tycho gets out of the carriage.
The Emperor? Are we at the palace?
Kepler gets out of the carriage and sees.
They were indeed at the palace, and waiting inside was none other than Emperor Rudolph II himself.
Thank you for granting us an audience today, Your Majesty.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Did you know that Tycho makes all my horoscopes? He's one of the few people I can trust these days.
Oh,
My brother Matthias has his eyes on my throne, but Tycho says I shouldn't worry.
The stars promise you a long life, Your Majesty.
Also, the stars are pretty.
yes.
They resemble a fine piece of jewelry in the sky.
Your Majesty, it is a rare blessing to have an emperor so personally invested in astronomy.
How would you describe it? A pearl, perhaps?
Perfectly articulated.
A pearl, yes. In the sky. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
I like him.
Kepler has a brilliant mind.
Hmm.
Tell His Majesty what you used to first develop the model you sent me.
Shapes.
Geometric solids.
You mean tetrahedrons, cubes, octahedrons, dodecahedrons, and icosahedrons?
Exactly.
How fascinating. Have you ever constructed a physical model of that?
Yes.
He made it into a punch bowl.
True story.
You must send me one. I consider myself something of a collector. But tell me, Tycho, what did you want to discuss?
I am sure Your Majesty is familiar with star tables.
That is what you use to make my horoscopes, yes?
Precisely. Star tables predict the positions of everything in the night sky over the years. We have the Alphonse tables, which assume the planets orbit the Earth, and the Prutenic tables, which assume everything orbits the Sun.
Ah, but you two have a different system.
Actually,
Whatever system you prefer, it is clear our current tables are inaccurate. All you need to do is look up at the night sky and you will find the planets often appear far away from where either tables predict. Would you agree?
yes.
How frustrating. Is that why my horoscopes are always not correct?
It makes predictions of all sorts unreliable.
Somebody should do something about that.
Your Majesty, that has been my goal since I was 16. I have been taking accurate observations for decades. Now I believe I have enough to produce the best star tables the world has seen. And as a testament to your generous support of astronomy, I humbly ask your permission to give these proposed tables a name befitting of their exceptional significance, the Rudolphine tables.
Oh, the Rudolphing tables. Permission granted.
Tycho bows and motions for Kepler to do the same.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Our gratitude will only be surpassed by that of generations to follow.
It is certainly an exciting project.
Indeed, it will be difficult, though. That is why I want my brightest assistant to work on these tables with me.
Me?
Oh, so now you have some humility.
What an excellent idea!
All we need from you, Your Majesty, is a salary for Kepler to ensure he can stay here and complete the work.
If it's only money standing in your way, then fret no more. Kepler, you shall have your salary.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Kepler bows.
Ah, what a happy day. Is everything sorted then?
Almost. There are simply some arrangements to finish between Kepler and I.
What are you waiting for? I think this is a fantastic opportunity.
It is perhaps the only cause for which I am eager to share my data. I am happy to have you back, Kepler.
Kepler knew it would pain him to no end to see Tycho's observations without getting to use them in his own work, but he also knew it would hurt more to not see the observations at all.
It would indeed. That's why it's so crucial for astronomers to accept each setback with tenacious resiliency. For instance, after I missed the first transit of Venus, I resolved to stay in Asia to observe the next. It meant 8 more years away from my beloved family. But my duty to astronomy drove me to seize the opportunity. I built an observatory and had everything ready for the second transit. But as I surveyed the sky that fateful hour, alas, nothing but clouds.
Guillaume.
I waited 8 years to see clouds.
Guillaume!
Yes.
You're ruining our segue.
Oh, my apologies. Where were we?
Kepler just agreed to make the Rudolphine tables with Tycho.
Ah, yes. He would finally have both the salary and access to those all-important observations.
It seemed a more stable partnership between the two astronomers had finally begun.
But no horoscopes could have predicted how suddenly that partnership would end.
We take you now to Prague, Bohemia, on October 13th, 1601.
Lights up on a vacant dining table.
Peter von Ursinus Rosenberg
Present!
is hosting a dinner at his palace, just next door to Emperor Rudolph.
Oh, this meal is to die for.
In attendance at this dinner are Tycho and his dear friend, Counselor Minkwitz.
These horoscopes Rudolph has been demanding are driving me mad.
How will we tell the difference in you?
No, I mean it. I have far better things to do than to figure out what the planets have to say about his chances of being assassinated.
Minkwitz, Tycho, come join us at the table. What's this I hear about assassination attempts?
Nothing which lies outside the realm of paranoia.
A realm you're familiar with. If your obsession with Ursus is any indication.
The man is a threat to my very legacy.
The man is dead.
And all the harder to kill because of it. I will not let him be remembered for my model of the heavens.
He won't be.
I have Kepler working on a refutation of his claims on my work.
Another one? Ragging on the deceased this time?
It's the only way to have the last word.
Is Kepler up to the task?
He is exceptionally bright. Except he thinks the planets go around the sun.
So do you.
Most of them, yes, but the sun itself...
Don't let Minkwitz provoke you. Come, sit.
Tycho and Minkwitz sit. As soon as Tycho makes contact with the seat, he freezes.
He sits.
The trap is sprung.
His fate is set.
This chair will consign Tycho with Ursus to the grave.
And with Ursus to the hosts of astronomers refuted by the methodical mind of Kepler. He sits!
Tycho unfreezes.
Peter, have you heard the story about my ill-fated elk?
I certainly haven't.
It's a solemn story.
Indeed. 10 years ago, I had my niece's husband look after an elk I had gotten for my animal collection. She was a well-behaved creature, but perhaps took after me too well. One day, she found her way up to the room where the beer was stored. After drinking more than her fill, she took a tumble down the stairs. Bam!
Tycho bangs the table for emphasis, and his golden nose falls off.
Tycho!
That's all right.
Tycho takes a container of paste out of his pocket, rubs it on the back of the golden nose, and reattaches it to his face.
It happens sometimes. Anyway, the poor elk broke its leg and died shortly after.
Oh, dear.
Such are the dangers of excessive indulgence in alcohol. Oh, speaking of which, is that a bottle of wine I see?
The dinner continues.
More guests.
Small talk.
Savory meats.
Fine drink.
The very picture of noble society which Tycho scorned.
But never abandoned.
At one point in his life, his salary amounted to 1% of Denmark's revenue.
But you can't take it with you.
What's wrong?
I need to relieve myself.
Of what?
Of pee. I need to pee.
It would be incredibly disrespectful to get up before the host.
I am aware.
Do you think you can hold it?
Yes, I'll be fine.
Tycho!
Yes?
Didn't you lose your nose in a duel?
That is correct. One of my college peers claimed to be the better mathematician between us.
That's what I thought. What happened?
He turned out to be the better swordsman.
Ah, I see. My wife was wondering.
It was the worst pain I've ever been. Until recently.
It's okay. He's almost finished with his chicken.
Rosenberg mimes eating a piece of chicken, savoring each bite. It takes a long time. Perhaps he then licks his fingers, wipes them with a napkin, lets out a satisfied sigh, etc. Whatever can be done to draw out Tycho's agony. Finally, Rosenberg is about to rise, but then...
Oh, dessert is on the way!
Son of a...
Tycho would have no relief that night.
In either sense of the word.
Not even after he returned home.
Tycho stands with his back to the audience, attempting to relieve himself.
It's no use!
We are now in Tycho's bedroom. Tycho lies down on the bed.
Holding it in at dinner had done his bladder no service. For 5 sleepless days and nights, he cannot pee.
With intense pain, he manages to get a little out, but it's still mostly blocked. Is that too much information?
We astronomers care about all the data.
Ni frustra visera videra, ni frustra visera videra, ni frustra visera videra.
Many to come to visit Tycho in his suffering.
His family, of course.
And also his best assistant.
Kepler.
I'm here. For you?
Where else would I be?
You've been delirious for days. I wasn't sure you would be here.
I am, unfortunately.
I've been praying for you constantly.
Kepler. I need you to carry on my work.
You can carry it on.
I think this is it for me. But you are my brightest student.
You flatter me.
No flattery. You're the only one who can prove it to the world.
The Tychonic system?
Yes.
I will continue your work.
I know you favor Copernicus.
It's hard to tell for certain. I have only just begun to see your data.
I could not trust you. You and Ursus.
Stop fighting dead men's battles.
I will. Soon. But I hope you won't.
Thank you for taking me in. For everything.
I did do quite a lot for you.
Yes.
Think about that when choosing a model to publish.
All right.
All right, as in...
I'm not going to argue with you in this state.
You can speak your mind. Dying men get plenty of sympathy already.
I cannot promise to support your model. I will have to align it with whatever the data shows.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I should have gone for the sympathy.
Tycho has a fit of pain.
I'll bring your family in.
Ni frustra visera videra, ni frustra visera videra, ni frustra visera
Let me
videra.
not seem to have lived in vain.
It would be incredibly disrespectful to get up before the host.
So trivial an offense.
Lights fade on Tycho as he dies.
So trivial an offense indeed. It is astounding how often astronomers are thwarted by the smallest of matters. Rocking ships, cloudy skies. Why? In my journeys, I once...
Guillaume!
Yes?
Tycho just died.
Of course, I apologize.
Show a little respect.
Shall we have a moment of silence?
Let's take 15 minutes.
For silence?
For intermission.
Ah, yes. Tycho's death makes for a compelling cliffhanger. What will happen next? How will Kepler move astronomy forward from here?
That, and the audience could probably use a bathroom break. We just saw what happens if you try and hold it in.
You die.
Not the most tactful way of putting it, but I can't fault your accuracy.
So please, everyone, take advantage of the intermission.
You saw what's at stake. Don't be a hero.
End of Act 1. Welcome back to Good Heavens by Daniel Repp. Act 2. Katharina, 75, enters. She looks around at the audience, confused. Then she sits down in a corner of the stage.
Welcome back, everyone.
Those of you who came back.
And the rest of you can't hear us anyway.
Fair point.
Guillaume and I wanted to kick off the second act with something fun.
We're gonna do some trivia.
It's a fun little game of our invention called
Keep Kepler
or
Tycho. Here's how it works. We're going to ask a series of questions, and the answer to all of them is either Kepler or Tycho.
If you think you know the answer, raise your hand and we might call on you.
Then you get a chance to answer.
Guillaume, what happens if they have an incorrect answer?
Then they're wrong.
And if they have the correct answer?
They get to be right.
Exactly. So, first question, this is a warm-up. Which Danish astronomer had the most accurate astronomical observations at the end of the 1500s?
Tycho!
Tycho!
Well done. And which German astronomer first went to school to become a pastor?
Kepler!
Precisely. Now for some stuff we haven't covered. Which astronomer was kidnapped at birth and raised by his aunt and uncle?
Tycho?
Kepler?
It was Tycho. Very close.
Did his parents notice?
They did, but they were kind of like, You can look that up. It's true.
That they were like, eh?
That Tycho was kidnapped and his parents didn't mind.
Now, which astronomer observed a Type 1 supernova in the night sky?
Tycho!
Kepler?
Tycho?
Actually, both Tycho and Kepler saw Type 1 supernovas.
Did you say both?
Indeed!
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
Type 1 supernovas in our galaxy occur rarely, only a few every 1,000 years.
But Tycho and Kepler both got one.
One in 1572 and one in 1604.
Remarkable.
Stupendous.
Good.
Heavens.
But I wonder if our audience feels tricked by that question.
It was a bit sneaky.
On the other hand, by being wrong, you get to learn something new. I wonder, is it better to have others think you're right in the first place, or to discover the truth?
You're being a bit heavy-handed with the themes.
Just wanted to refresh the audience.
Next question. Which astronomer wrote the first science fiction story?
Kepler.
It was Kepler. No, it was Kepler. Good try, though. He wrote Somnium, or The Dream, about a journey to the moon.
Interestingly, the main character in the story works with Tycho for a time.
And his mother is a witch.
I am not a witch.
Hypatia and Guillaume notice Katharina for the first time.
Good.
Heavens! Who are you?
What are you doing here?
My name is Katharina.
Well, Katharina, I must inform you that it's incredibly poor dramatic structure to introduce a new cast member in the second act. Besides, Hypatia and I play most of the characters.
You are telling Johannes's story.
And Tycho's, yes.
So why leave out his mother?
Oh, so you're that Katharina.
Yes.
It is an honor to meet you, Mrs. Kepler.
I assure you, the honor is all yours.
But to be frank, this is the realm of historically famous deceased astronomers.
1 out of 3 ain't bad.
It is when it disrupts the timeline.
You haven't died yet in the story, you see?
Good. It wouldn't be fair to kill me off before I got here.
We weren't going to kill you off. You weren't going to be in the story at all.
Excuse me.
But we'd be happy to add you in.
We would?
Guillaume, sidebar.
Hypatia and Guillaume move to one side of the stage and argue.
I guess I'm in charge of the next question. Which astronomer had a lousy, good-for-nothing brute of a father, a spineless traitor of a brother, and a vicious, backstabbing pack of neighbors?
Kepler?
You bet your butt it was Kepler.
Katharina, we have reached a decision.
Do tell.
You can be in the play, and you can play yourself, but Guillaume and I will handle the narration.
I'll take it, but don't skip my parts.
We won't.
Okay. I'll be waiting off stage. Oh, and if anyone wants to buy some herbs after the show for foot pain, warts, too much snot, or...
Kepler.
I'm going. Can't even make a few bucks around here.
Where did we leave off?
Tycho just passed away.
Ah, yes. Let me not seem to have lived in vain.
He asked Kepler to prove his Tychonic model of the universe.
He held his pee too long.
The death of Tycho Brahe was sad news for Prague.
Sad news for his home country in Denmark.
Sad news for his large family.
Sad news for everyone.
Except, perhaps, for one man, the imperial mathematician appointed to replace Tycho.
There was an obvious choice.
Not Longomontanus, of course.
Who's going to take someone seriously if their name is Longomontanus?
Longomontanus. More like hippopotamus. The decision came just 2 days after Tycho's death. The next imperial mathematician was none other than Johannes Kepler.
In handing me Tycho's data, God has given me the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe.
Long convinced that the planets move around the sun, he was finally free to investigate what the movement looked like.
For a time, he was over the moon, or rather, past the moon. He was studying the planets is all I meant, and he loved it.
Reality, however, did not fit his optimism.
The scene shifts to Kepler's study, where he is consulting Tycho's measurement tables.
Mars, why do you continue to elude me? Such a strange pattern. If there is a pattern.
Hello, anyone home?
Technojo, how do you do?
How do you do?
My sincerest condolences for the loss of your father-in-law. I hope the past year has been kinder to your family.
Oh yeah, it's been swell, just peachy. My wife was thrilled to miss her father's funeral. We had a fantastic carriage ride yesterday where we got stuck in the mud for hours. And now we're back in Prague. It turns out some wannabe has stolen our inheritance.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That last one's you, by the way. You're the wannabe.
I don't understand.
Those instruments you've been using, the pages of data, in fact, pretty much anything that would fall under the category of my father-in-law's hard-earned life's work, not yours.
The Emperor purchased it all from your family.
The Emperor purchased it all from your family.
Yes, that's right, for 20,000 florins.
Tell me, how much of your salary have you received from old Rudolph?
There have been some delays, I suppose.
I bet not a lot. That man's not in very touch with his treasury. He promises money left and right, but gives it out in neither direction. I don't know. Point is, he never got around to buying Tycho stuff, so it's still ours.
Your father-in-law was a brilliant man.
Your father-in-law was... Oh, wait, that one's true.
With his data, I am so close to figuring out what moves the planets, the very force that whirls them around the sun.
And when you say the planets, are you including the Earth on that list? Look, you're a bright guy, but being chief math man or whatever doesn't give you the right to use Tycho's work against his legacy.
This theory will be his legacy. I see how God has let me be bound with Tycho through an unalterable fate, and
His
how it
dying wish was to have the Tychonic system proven.
I was there.
I wasn't, but I still know how to honor him.
If you take away the observations, who's going to finish the Rudolphine tables?
I am.
You?
The court put me in charge of them this morning.
Tycho and I started those tables together. That was my job.
It's mine now at double the salary, I might add. So, I mean, I know Rudolph won't pay the salary anyway, but still.
You imbecile. You couldn't tell a waxing gibbous from a waning crescent.
Okay, number one, rude. Number two, I know how the sun works.
Those tables were going to be the most accurate in the world for predicting astronomical events. Having you on the task will triple the error margins.
Don't worry, you're still imperial mathematician.
But without data.
You can keep working on candles and eyeballs. It's all really fascinating work you're doing.
You infuriate me.
That was sincere. When you're not threatening my family's name, I support your work entirely.
I see.
Tegnagel begins collecting Tycho's observations.
I'll go ahead and take the observations you have here. Send the rest over tomorrow. Oh, and the key to the storage room with all the instruments.
Kepler takes the key from his pocket and hands it over.
Good man.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Keep up the good work and all.
Kepler realizes Tegnagel has missed the case with the Mars data.
A man like that is going to take a great deal of time to complete the Rudolphine tables. Surely he won't notice some missing data on Mars.
Kepler sent over most of the data, but he had plenty to work on with Mars. In fact, Mars being the trickiest orbit to understand, it was a good resource to have.
Assuredly, through Mars we either arrive at the secrets of astronomy, or else they remain forever concealed from us.
Kepler, like most astronomers before him, assumed the planets orbited in circles because circles are perfect and God is perfect and the heavens are the realm of God.
Or gods. But hey, the circles made sense.
Don't fret. I dare not criticize a mind of your caliber. It's just that when you have very precise data, trying to keep those big hoops in the sky gives you even more hoops to jump through.
For instance, why do the planets slow down and speed up?
Why do they sometimes go backwards?
Most astronomers tried to explain this by changing where the circles are centered.
The sun.
The Earth.
Or somewhere in between.
The more uncertain your observations, the easier it was to fudge your model to make it work.
But Kepler was not one to fudge.
The circles don't work! 70 trials down and none of them work.
Kepler's difficulty was also his biggest asset. The data he had was extraordinarily precise.
It was, wasn't it?
Tycho!
Yes, I'm here. Where is here?
You're in the realm of historically famous deceased astronomers.
Welcome to the team!
You mean I'm...
I probably could have eased you into that being dead part a bit more smoothly.
You may want to sit down.
I'm famous?
Of course, certainly.
Your work goes down through the ages.
That is a true delight. Tell me, is Ursus Here too?
Certainly not.
That is even better.
He is referenced only as a minor figure in your life.
Ursus lived as a parasite on greater men's accomplishment. It is a fitting that his legacy must leech what it can from mine.
Of course, your legacy does not exist in a vacuum either.
Why am I remembered?
Largely because of this man.
Kepler! There he is, studious as ever. I always knew he had potential.
Potential, yes, but also setbacks.
What setbacks?
Let's look ahead a year.
We can see the future?
Isn't that what astronomers are for?
I present to you spring, 1603. Knock, knock.
Good heavens, I didn't hear you come in.
You need to learn to make better predictions.
That's the idea, yes?
You want to ask me how the Rudolphine tables are going?
Why?
Ask me how the Rudolphine tables are going.
Okay.
Ask.
How are the Rudolphine tables going?
How are the Rudolphine tables going? They were going pretty good. I started on the Mars predictions this morning, but I feel like I'm missing something.
Mars is the god of war. I have often felt at war with the planet.
Since when do you do poetry?
For a while, actually.
Oh, the point is, the thing I feel like I'm missing, it's observations. My father-in-law's observations. You wouldn't happen to have seen them recently, would you? That's what I thought.
You're being unreasonable.
I know you are, but what am I?
Unreasonable.
I don't need this kind of stress right now. I'm very busy with these tables.
That's why you could use my help.
Why would I trust you?
Technogel begins to leave.
Music!
What?
Trust me because I can hear the music.
All right, so we've got Mr. Noodle Brain Crazy Pants over here.
If you compare the planet's distances from the sun, you get the same ratios as the intervals between musical chords, and only the chords which make pleasing harmonies to the ear. Whatever balance of harmony God used to instruct our hearing, he also stitched it into the very fabric of the universe.
So you move from shapes to songs?
I have not given up on my geometric model yet. Both could be true.
But both put the sun at the center?
That makes for the most consistent patterns. At least I expect so. If I could only verify with Tycho's observations.
Yeah, no. We already have a model and it's peachy.
If you insist on having the sun gallop around the earth once a day, you miss out on the symphonies and sculptures in the stars.
Assuming there is a symphony and sculptures.
God is constantly endeavoring to remedy disorder on earth. Do you think he would tolerate disorderly heavens?
I don't think God would care. That's your own stuff you gotta deal with.
What do you mean?
Maybe there isn't some elegant pattern. You criticize Tycho for getting stuck in his assumptions, but aren't you doing the same thing? You assume the planets are moving, doing some fancy choreographed dance, but maybe they're just doing their thing, moving where they move.
You're saying I'm looking for a painting, but I should be looking for a machine.
You should be looking for a life, frankly.
This is my life. I have dedicated myself to solving these mysteries. If you really want to honor Tycho's observations, you will let me use them to their full potential.
Full potential. Look, dude, I'm just trying to finish these tables, and can I be real for a second? I was sort of hoping you wouldn't have these.
It was perhaps dishonest for me to hide these.
No, duh. That's not what I mean. I was hoping we lost the Mars data so I wouldn't have to finish these dumb tables.
What do you have against the Rudolphine tables?
Planet math is hard.
I would be more than happy to help. By way of apology, perhaps.
You read it?
Absolutely.
Technogel hugs Kepler and continues to sob.
And of course, while working on the tables, I can use the data to check my theories.
You
I will need to see the data if I'm going to help.
crazy man. Why do you get to be smart when you're so noodle brain crazy pants? Can't you just help me without working on your stupid space chords?
No. If you want me to help you publish your work, you will need to help me publish mine.
Publish? Who said anything about publish?
If I discover the divine order behind the cosmos, it will be my duty to share it with the world.
Your duty to who? Your bank account.
You can disagree with my theories, but to accuse me of avarice is simply...
Hey, I've been in it for the money since day one. Why do you think I married Tycho's daughter? Why do you think I want his model to survive? Why do you think I converted to Catholicism when a counselor position opened up? I just want you want the money too.
Naturally, I have some financial considerations.
Booyah!
But whatever my motives, you will not get my help on the tables unless you let me use Tycho's observations in my publications.
Okay, fine. But I get to write a preface or whatever you end up publishing.
Deal.
They shake on it.
I'm gonna write that people should believe you.
What? That's not what a preface is supposed to do.
Too late. No takesy backsies. Now come on, you've got some math to do.
You mean we?
Sure.
It beats candles and eyes, I suppose.
Candles and eyes.
Kepler discovered some crucial things about light. He essentially founded the field of optics.
He was the first to use ray diagrams to explain how light travels.
Centuries of physics students can thank Kepler for all those ray diagrams they had to draw.
Are there any physics students present tonight?
Nope.
I can't hear you.
None.
Good. I don't want anyone checking our math.
Did my son-in-law take my data away from Kepler in the first place?
Yes, only out of loyalty to you.
I see. I imagine that set Kepler back a few years. But maybe that gave him time to come to his senses about how the planets are arranged.
I think that's a fair statement to make.
Oh. I think I have it.
It is Easter, 1605, and Kepler has just made a monumental discovery. From the solitude of his study, he finds...
Johannes!
Mother?
Kepler freezes.
Excuse me, Mrs. Kepler.
You're excused. Now get out of my way.
Who are you?
Just a poor old woman trying to see her son.
Your son is in the middle of an important breakthrough.
And I want to see that. I want to celebrate with him.
That's very sweet, but you did promise you'd wait your turn.
You know, the trial.
What trial?
Later, brawhead.
Are striving for historical accuracy, Katharina.
I visited Johannes. It was a big deal. Traveling out to the city. Lots of potential customers for my herbal remedies.
But I doubt you burst into Kepler's study right at the moment of this discovery.
What's it to you? I want to hear what he found out.
He did publish a book.
No one ever taught me how to read.
Kepler did love to talk about his discoveries. It would be good for him to have an enthusiastic audience.
All right, Katharina.
That's more like it.
Kepler unfreezes. Katharina gives Kepler a big hug.
I'm so glad to see you. How was your trip?
It was a big hassle, but worth it to be here.
You've caught me in an excited mood. I have finally won a battle against the orbit of Mars.
You mean you found the center of the circle where it orbits?
No, I did not. No matter where you place the circle of orbit, it seems impossible to account for Tycho's observations.
Then why are you smiling?
Because it is impossible. The orbit is not circular at all.
How's that?
I was making no progress with circles, so I tried to imagine an oval instead as an exercise. That did not help much, which is a relief. How sloppy would God be if he let Mars orbit in an oval? Instead, Mars orbits in an ellipse.
How is an ellipse different from an oval?
An oval can be egg-shaped, as if you stretch out one side of a circle. An ellipse is symmetric in two directions, as if you stretched out a circle from both sides evenly.
But how is an ellipse less disappointing than an oval?
With an elliptical orbit, the sun falls directly on the focus.
Ellipses make the sun pay attention?
A focus is a special point that every ellipse has two of. At every point in a circular orbit, Mars would be at the same distance from the sun.
Right.
At every point, and in an elliptical orbit, the distances between Mars and each focus add up to the same number.
So if you know how far away Mars is from the sun, you can figure out how far away it is from the other focus?
Exactly. It's not as simple as a circle.
But it can still be explained with math.
Yes. So, we find God to work unexpectedly, but not sloppily.
And an ellipse fits the data.
It's the only orbit that does. This will change the course of astronomy.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Mother.
You know, I'm always bragging about you with the neighbors back in Leonberg. I bet Ursula's jealous that I have a genius for a son.
I have been fortunate in the opportunities our Heavenly Father has given me.
And your earthly mother. You're welcome for setting you up for success.
Of course. Sorry, what do you mean?
Remember when I took you up the hill to see that comet? You were just 5 years old.
Yes, I remember.
It was past your bedtime, but we went anyway because I'm a cool mom. I heard people talking about it and I said to myself, comets don't come around every day. Johannes needs to see.
It was beautiful.
Kids need inspiration. That's what I'm always telling Ursula. She could have had a genius kid if she showed a little effort.
Do you think I became an astronomer just because you took me to see a comet at age 5?
Well, and because I encouraged you to take that mathematician position in Graz. You're welcome again.
I think you should be careful in taking responsibility for the course of my career.
How's that?
My physical frailty made me unsuited for observations of my own. I would not have been so dependent on Tycho's data if I had better eyesight or a stronger constitution.
It's not my fault you were born premature. Although, frankly, I don't mind you giving me those few months off.
I'm referring to the time I got smallpox when I was 3. That's what ruined my eyesight. I almost died.
I'm sure it wasn't that bad.
How would you know? You ran off to follow father when he joined the war.
I had to get away from the in-laws. You know how nasty your father's parents were.
I do. You left me alone with them for a year.
You survived.
I survived? Is that your metric for successful parenting?
I wouldn't mind raising a son with a little gratitude. But I suppose that's a lost cause.
Yes. Thank you, Mother. Thank you for the one night you took me to a comet after leaving me to smallpox and callous guardians for a year.
You're welcome. It wasn't easy for me either, you know. Congrats on the ellipses.
Thank you.
It really is remarkable. I'll tell Ursula you get the credit on this one, not me.
You could take some credit. Working through that math took a great deal of stubbornness. Must have gotten it from somewhere.
Does this breakthrough mean you're closer to publishing your book?
I believe so.
Then you can afford to buy me some lunch. Let's celebrate.
I am astonished.
Yeah, that mama drama can get you.
The planet's orbit and ellipses!
Oh, that too.
You think centuries of astronomers arguing about where to put their circles, and there are no circles at all.
It's a subtle distinction. Kepler found that circular orbits for Mars gave wrong predictions by just 8 arc minutes.
If you hold a penny up to the sky at arm's length, 8 arc minutes is roughly less than the thickness.
Kepler could have dismissed the discrepancy as an error in the data, but he trusted your observations.
As we have established, he is a smart fellow. What is the book that Katharina mentioned?
That would be Astronomia Nova, New Astronomy.
New astronomy based upon causes or celestial physics, treated by means of commentaries on the motions of the star Mars from the observations of Tycho Brahe. A shorter title than his last book. What an improvement.
Are you honored to be so prominently referenced?
It is rather satisfying. This is more about ellipses, I take it.
Yes, it is.
It's a bit of a long read, really, so perhaps we should carry on with the story.
Is this where Kepler chose which model to endorse?
Gosh, it's actually been a while since I read New Astronomy.
So ellipses, pretty crazy, right?
Listen to this. Let us consider how the Earth would appear in the sky from Mars as the sun orbits the Earth. He finally admits the Earth is fixed.
Oh?
Working with Technical must have brought some sense to him. What a delightful conclusion. Kepler found his divinely ordered universe. Astronomy gained a foundation in better data, and the Teutonic system was proven to the world.
I can understand why that makes you excited.
All I was missing was those ellipses. The sun was out of focus. Is the sun on an ellipses around the Earth too?
Well, no.
So the sun still orbits in a circle. Even better. The Earth ought to be the center of the universe, like scripture says. Well done, Kepler.
Yes, Kepler definitely pushed boundaries.
I do love happy endings.
That wasn't the ending.
No?
New Astronomy was published in 1609.
In 1611, Kepler's world started to go south.
Emperor Rudolf was deposed by his younger brother Matthias, leaving Kepler's continued station as imperial mathematician uncertain.
Kepler managed to find a teaching position in Linz, where he was offered a job as district mathematician.
But before he left, tragedy struck the Kepler household multiple times.
First, Kepler's 3 children came down with smallpox, the same disease he faced as a child.
The 3 children, unlike Kepler, had 2 watchful parents close at hand, but his 6-year-old son Friedrich unlike Kepler, did not survive.
Then, when Matthias's troops brought in a wave of sickness that swept the city, Kepler's wife Barbara took it upon herself to help nurse the sick.
She became ill herself and passed away.
That's terrible. What did Kepler do?
He moved his remaining family to Linz.
He mourned.
He sold calendars to fund the printing of his next book.
As beautiful as the night sky is, it makes a coldly indifferent observer to the disappointments of life below.
I agree entirely. Why, I myself once traveled oceans and spent years trying to observe the transit of Venus. I missed it.
Those happen in pairs, correct? About 8 years apart?
Don't encourage him.
I missed them both.
Oh, And the pairs only happen every 100 years.
Precisely.
I tried to warn you.
After my second failed attempt, I longed for home. Instead, I faced dysentery and a hurricane. It took many ships and many storms, but I eventually arrived safely in Paris. I was home at last, after 11 years taunted by the night sky's secret.
That is quite a story.
I'm not finished! All throughout my travels, I wrote home to my family and colleague, but I never received any replies. After I returned, I found out why. None of my letters ever reached Paris. As a result, I had been pronounced dead in my absence. My apparent death gave my relatives legal permission to plunder my estate, a task they completed thoroughly. I also lost my seat in the Royal Academy of Sciences. And my wife, the light of my life, who I fought through war and disease and storms to see again, she had remarried. I lost everything in my pursuit of knowledge and gained nothing. No one has suffered for astronomy more than me.
I was violently murdered by a mob.
I retract my statement.
I advised someone who was enemies with someone who a bunch of angry Christians supported.
That must have been terrible.
You died surrounded by family and the man who would make you famous. I died surrounded by senseless hatred. You remarried and lived another 21 years. When I lost everything, I got no second chance. Whenever a man thinks he's known the most pain, there's usually a woman who has it worse. It is unfathomable how much we have suffered because others can't suffer us to be brilliant. Let's skip ahead in Kepler's story. There's something I want you to see.
What year?
1620.
The trial?
The trial.
Took you long enough.
Take it away, Katharina.
I've always tried to be a good neighbor. For instance, I let people know when they're being idiots. They usually don't appreciate it, but that's tough love. They'd be worse off finding the hard way. Anyway, another thing I do to help the neighbors is make little herbal remedies for when they're sick. All organic and at fair prices too. Find me after the show if you're interested.
Katharina, the trial.
I'm getting there. One day, my son Christoph gets in a disagreement with my neighbor Ursula. Some business dispute I don't even remember. But Ursula was being an idiot, so I let her know. Neighbor stuff. Ursula gets sour about it and starts a rumor. She says she's getting sick because of a potion I sold her 3 years ago. Before long, the rumor says I'm a witch. And the neighbors eat it up. Because remember, a lot of them are idiots. They say, she makes herbal medicine, right? She's a mean old lady, right? Which I guess is what they call honesty. Pretty soon, rumors grow into accusations, and I end up in a prison cell awaiting trial for witchcraft.
Katharina is now inside a prison cell.
Those pigs. If I had poisoned Ursula, I would admit it with pride.
Mother.
Johannes?
Yes.
What are you doing here?
I came as soon as Margareta told me they were keeping you here.
You came all the way from Linz.
Of course.
What about your work?
This is more important.
Tell that to your brother. It figures he disappeared when the going got tough. Takes after his father.
You have a sharp wit and a cutting tongue. We may need to dull them before the trial.
We?
Yes, I am going to write your full defense.
I can think for myself.
Of course. But the courts rarely accept the defendant's testimony in a witchcraft trial.
God will protect me.
And it is his pleasure to use me as his tool in that endeavor.
All right. Thank you, Johannes.
Thank you.
Well, get on with it. What's the big plan?
Let's start from where we are.
They are keeping me here in the dark and in the cold. The warden is using money from my account to heat his own room. I am entirely alone.
How can they do this?
You know, they keep insisting the devil's at work in this town. Maybe they're onto something.
I will write to the magistrate at once. We'll get you heat and some proper food. Have they given you any documents about the case?
I don't think they've been keeping documents.
We'll need to have everything in writing. Every testimony against you, every statement by the court so far.
To make it harder for the magistrate to try any funny business?
Yes. And also so I can craft a logical argument for your defense.
These idiots don't listen to logic. They've already made up their minds on what's what.
That's why I need all the data. I've had my practice refuting false claims. Sometimes the slightest detail can bring them crashing down.
Like the 8-argument discrepancy in circular orbits. He's talking about his work analyzing my observations.
I'm telling the story here.
Of course. Please, continue.
Johannes is truly the man for the job. In the court records, the scribe writes,
Unfortunately, the prisoner appears with the support of her son, the mathematician.
Before long, we're sorting through testimonies to build the case.
The good news is, there are a lot of claims against you.
How is that good news?
The more false stories people have made up, the more likely we are to find inconsistencies between them.
I'm sure there are plenty of lies to choose from.
There are. One accusation says you rode Michael Stahl's cow at midnight under last April's full moon, and another says you laid a curse on Bastian Meyer's pig on the other side of town that same night. A young Gerbersheim girl said you grabbed her by the left arm and left a mark, a witch's mark, but her father testified it was on the right arm.
That's a good start. I don't know where people come up with these things.
It's absurd. The magistrate himself claims you tried to bribe him with a silver cup to dismiss your case.
Oh.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Well, to be fair, it was a very nice cup.
What?
I thought it was worth a shot. Offering a little gift is not an act of witchcraft. It shouldn't even matter for this trial.
It makes you look guilty. We need every resource for this trial, including your reputation.
It's not like your reputation has helped my case.
What do you mean?
You may have been a prophet in Prague, but you're a heretic in your hometown. A staunch supporter of Copernicus, excommunicated from the Lutheran Church. How did that happen?
When I was looking for work in Linz, they were concerned because I once referred to the Calvinists as our brothers in Christ. Apparently, hoping for some unity is suspicious.
What got you kicked out for good?
I told the Lutheran Church in Linz that I accept all their doctrine except for that of communion.
Because you don't believe bread is literally Jesus's body?
Right.
They asked you questions that specific on your first visit?
No. I brought it up.
Johannes!
I wanted to avoid any theological misunderstanding.
Clearly that worked out. All I needed was a son known for stirring up trouble in the church.
I got expelled from Graz rather than convert to the Catholicism. They had no cause to question my loyalty.
Maybe, if you didn't go blurting out every controversial
Where
thought.
do you think I get that from?
Johannes, that is probably true.
I apologize. My anger is not towards you. The Lutherans, the Catholics, the Calvinists. It makes me heartsick that these three great blocks have ripped at the truth so terribly that I am left collecting it piece by piece, wherever I can find them.
I, for one, am glad my son still cares about the truth. Especially now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I snapped at you. The truth is, I'm terrified. When they took me from your sister's house, they carried me in a wooden box in the middle of the night. Everyone in this town wants to light me on fire. I don't want to die.
You're not going to.
1 year and 126 pages later, Johannes submits my defense. Soon after, the verdict releases their verdict.
The court finds the evidence insufficient to sentence execution.
Well done, Kepler.
Don't get too excited.
However, the court cannot, in good conscience, release a possible witch into the public. Therefore, we submit a verdict of uncertain.
Uncertain?
The defendant shall undergo one final test to determine if she has practiced witchcraft, cognition of torture.
September 28th, 1621, I am taken to the executioner to receive my test.
Hypatia wheels out a cart of torture instruments.
I'm not sure I want
Play
to.
your part.
Let's begin, shall we?
Let's get this over with.
Oh, we'll take our time.
He picks up a pair of pincers.
This is used to pull fingernails, like so.
He demonstrates slowly in the air. He continues to explain the tools silently.
For hours, Katharina is shown all the instruments used to torture witches. In gruesome detail, the executioner explains the agony they can inflict. This is cognition of torture, a form of psychological terror that made most people admit to anything. When that happened, the court didn't need any further evidence.
All this awaits you if you do not confess your wicked deeds. And it is nothing compared to the agony which befalls the unrepentant in hell. You may now confess.
Even if you pull one vein after the other out of my body, I would have nothing to confess.
Katharina drops to her knees in prayer.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
You cannot hide from God.
Tell that to Ursula.
Don't you understand punishment?
Punishment? Yeah, that's the thing that's supposed to happen when people do bad things. You might want to warn the witnesses who testified against me.
Huh.
Huh?
Usually people confess by now.
I have nothing to confess, as God is my
Your witness, sure. I've carried out the sentence. You're free to go.
In any other circumstance, I would have gone straight to execution. Instead, we won the case, because Johannes didn't abandon me.
Kepler and Katharina embrace.
Katharina was a woman of steadfast principles and incredible courage. That, more than Tycho's data, is the inheritance upon which Kepler built his greatness. When no one else did, Kepler fought for truth in all spheres of life.
What happened to Katharina?
She died 6 months later.
Will she be joining us?
All look off stage to where Katharina last exited. Nothing.
I don't think so. But you were saying about your story.
I was wrong to boast about the extent of my sufferings. But please forgive me.
I forgive you. You just need to have perspective. When you're gifted with resources, influence, intelligence, use it well.
Thank you.
Shall we finish up the story?
Yes, let's.
I am curious to find out if Kepler ever finished the Rudolphine tables.
Oh, yeah. When you reference something here, it can show up in front of you.
Take some time getting used to.
So this is Kepler finishing the Rudolphine tables.
Yes, he was finally able to publish them in 1627.
It was a grueling task requiring years of calculations.
The positions of all 1,005 stars you took data on,
400 stars measured by previous astronomers,
and information on finding the location of the moon and planets in the sky.
yet another child born from the marriage of your careful observations with his brilliant new insight into celestial mechanics.
By May 1635, Venus will be at this point in its orbit, and the Earth will have moved here.
Did he just say the Earth will have moved?
Well,
Didn't he write, as the sun orbits in new astronomy?
Technically, yes, but it
Let us consider how the Earth would appear in the sky from Mars. As the sun orbits the Earth along with Mars, we see that Earth would move at different speeds over time. In other words, Earth appears to move just like a planet. What? The rascal, he assumed the Earth was fixed to argue that it moves.
he's a clever writer.
Clever, he's devious and deceitful.
it's a fairly common rhetorical device
And
that
you made it sound like technical, made sure Kepler published my model.
didn't want to upset you.
Kepler downplayed my achievements based on the advantages I got by being born into nobility. Yet, even with all my advantages, this feeble nobody gets to come out ahead?
If you think about it, being raised in nobility was sort of your downfall with the whole staying seated during dinner thing.
That ungrateful. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind.
Tycho begins to approach Kepler.
You want to play a character in Kepler's history?
No, I want to talk to him as me from now on.
You can't do that. Can he do that?
Tycho, we need to be objective narrators here. We're not supposed to intervene.
Tycho leans over Kepler's desk.
He's intervening.
Kepler!
Tycho pushes the paper Kepler is working on to the floor. Kepler picks it up and returns to work.
Look at me!
Tycho pushes it off again, and Kepler again picks it up and continues working. Then Tycho picks up the paper and holds it in the air.
It's Tycho! Remember the man that made you?
Kepler notices Tycho for the first time. He prays.
Holy Father, protect me from the spirit I see before me.
Stop that, I'm not a ghost. Am I a ghost? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you are abusing my data.
I need to get more sleep. This is why I don't do observations.
You're not hallucinating, and no, you don't do observations, so stop taking advantage of mine.
My goal has always been to uncover the divine order of the universe. Do we not share that goal?
Where's the divine order in an earth that swirls around the sun like lights in the sky? The earth is solid and sluggish and...
I understand your desire to keep a fixed earth. I was so desperate to find perfection in God's creation. I once thought he built the universe based on shapes, and for a time I thought he built it using music, as if the planets themselves were a chord struck to sing his praise. But I have found we cannot even keep our heavenly circles.
I am aware. You settled on ellipses.
Yes, it is not the craftsmanship I expected from God, but it is beautiful craftsmanship nonetheless.
How is it beautiful if it suggests against all common sense an earth that moves?
Because it's true.
And you think people will remember you for these ellipses?
If they remember the ellipses, they are free to forget me.
Either way, they'll forget me.
The only entity the heavens should glorify is God.
Am I wrong to want some legacy for my decades of work?
You sound like Ursus. All he cared about was fame.
You cannot compare us. He was a thief. I was an innovator. My model was beautiful.
But it was not true. I worked hard on that.
And so did I, yet you have dismissed me with ease.
Tycho begins to gather papers off Kepler's desk. Kepler notices and begins to gather papers as well to salvage them.
I depend on you. Your measurements are the scales on which I weigh the universe against my models.
And so your work rises to the top.
But only once it is bowed to yours.
Tycho and Kepler now each have half the pages.
What would you do if I destroyed all of this?
I would write it again.
All of it?
Yes. It would give me a chance to check the math.
Maybe you should. No matter how fancy your theories are, they can't just justify a moving Earth. That's why your calculations took so long.
My calculations took so long because I had other projects to work on. For instance, I wanted to publish one last ephemeris before the tables came out.
Why publish a calendar of planetary positions if you had these tables coming?
It wouldn't sell as well once people had these tables to find planetary positions for themselves.
Ah, Johannes Kepler holding back his discoveries for personal gain.
I am paying to publish the Rudolphine tables out of my own pocket. I don't have money just lying around like you did. And those with wealth never see the value in astronomical work.
I did.
And humanity will thank you for your gift, if only you'll let me give it. What was the point of all those observations if you won't submit to what they show?
All right, let's let observations decide. Tell me a prediction you make in these tables, something you expect to see if the Earth is orbiting the sun in your ellipses with the other planets.
Let me see. There should be a transit of Venus. November 7th, 1631.
Perfect. Let's see what the observations show.
You're going to show me the future?
Isn't that what astronomers are for?
Tycho takes Kepler into the future, out on a hill where they can see the sky.
This is getting out of hand.
Now, here we are in 1631. There's the sun. Let's see if Mercury crosses.
Tycho stares intently towards the sun.
Don't stare at the sun. You'll ruin your eyes.
I'm dead, aren't I? I can't lose my eyesight now. Just my reputation.
This transit will only help your reputation.
There will be no transit.
Tycho sees the transit.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
it's there.
It's just a dot moving across the sun?
What did you think a transit would look like?
I'm a little relieved. Perhaps I didn't miss much after all.
Thank you for taking me to see this.
It means you were right.
It means I served God well.
People will know just a few years after you publish, which means the world never embraces the Tychonic model.
No.
My life's a work. Forgotten.
No, Tycho. Your life's work immortalized.
Immortalized?
Yes. You recentered astronomy around precise observation, and it works. You moved us from musing to measuring.
Let's get you back to your study.
Tycho and Kepler returned to the study.
You asked me once to stop fighting dead man's battles. Consider this my surrender.
Is he going to give Kepler his nose?
What?
Oh, I get it.
Thank you.
Just promise me one thing. Keep the title to Rudolphing Tables. Can you? 2 words is plenty.
I suppose it's a small sacrifice to make.
And I wouldn't complain if you put an image of me on the cover.
I think I can arrange that. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you. I suppose you only get to change the world if you're willing to let it move.
Kepler's discoveries about planetary motion would prove indispensable.
They were used by Isaac Newton to develop a theory of gravity.
They were used by NASA to send spacecraft to every planet.
And they will be used by future generations in ways we never thought of.
Are you on the team now?
I think we have a story worth telling.
Good night, everyone.
May you have clear skies.
And clear consciences.
The lights fade except on Kepler. Then, blackout. End of play.